No, not
January 6th was a bad day.
Can I finish?
Murders are also bad.
Can I finish?
I want murder solved.
Can you
just let her finish?
Scott's gonna.
Well, if she wants to come out here and take pot shots at me, I'm not going to allow it.
It's
a stupid argument. I'm not going to allow it.
Scott, just let her finish. I don't even know that we've even heard the argument yet.
No, we heard it. We heard it every day.
You were denying. So go ahead, Julie.
On Abby Phillip's CNN show, things got pretty tense between Scott Jennings and Democratic strategist Julie Rodzinski. We're going to take a look at some clips from that exchange along with the rest of the panel's reactions. I'll share my thoughts as we go, so let's jump right into it.
Everything is an emergency, giving him extraordinary powers that are supposed to be temporary in many cases, but he's using them in ways that have never been used before. Where does this end, Scott?
Well, I guess in the case of safety for Washington, D.C., it'll end when it's safe again. I mean, and Congress may need to get involved here.
What do you define as safe again?
Well, what do you define as an acceptable rate of violence in the city? I think the expectation of the citizens is they don't want to die or get carjacked.
I think becomes a very important question. How do we define what safe again means in an American city?
Well, I think in Washington, D.C., you're going to have substantial reductions in violence, substantial reductions in murder, substantial reductions in carjackings, and people are generally going to have to feel like they can walk around and not be under threat all the time. Now, some of this could be statistical, some of it could just be what the local residents are telling him about their quality of life. Will it be solved in 30 days? Probably not, but they're already making substantial progress. They've had over 100 arrests since August the 7th when he first brought this up. 43 people were arrested last night. Bad people are being taken off the streets. Illegal weapons are being taken off the streets. So they're already having some success. My advice on this, as a punditry matter, would be, well, let's see where we are at the end of 30 days. How much progress have they made? And then Congressman can make an assessment at that point about whether this is working, and maybe it would help to extend it a little bit.
I guess I'm old enough, Scott, to remember when you were appalled, as the rest of us were, on January 6th, when he wouldn't.
Because January 6th happened, should we not enforce the law today?
Excuse me.
Do you want murders today?
Let me finish, Scott. I know
January 6th equals no enforcement
Scott, I know you hate talking about
this is a silly argument.
No, let me finish before you make a point about a silly argument.
It'll be silly, but go ahead.
No, what's silly is you sitting down with Mitch McConnell over Chick-fil-A and lamenting how Donald Trump was putting all of you, including Mitch McConnell, in harm's way. But I guess now you're so...
I wasn't in harm's way. I was in Louisville.
No, your then boss, your friend Mitch McConnell certainly was. But, now...
January 6th was a bad day.
Can I finish?
Murders are also bad.
Can I finish?
I want murder solved.
Can you just let her finish?
Scott's going to...
Well, if she wants to come out here and take pot shots at me, I'm not going to allow it. It's a stupid argument. I'm not going to allow it.
Scott, just let her finish. I don't even know that we've even heard the argument yet.
No, we heard it. We heard everything that you were denying.
So go ahead,
Scott, I know you're thirsty for that Senate seat, but let me finish. What I'm going to say...
Again, you allow this every night.
Scott, just give me 1 second here. Let's just let her finish, please.
Okay.
Just one
Listen, I know you've got the picking thing going on, but here's what I'm going to say.
What are you thirsty for? Some kind of relevance out here?
No, actually, Scott.
I don't know what you do.
There's really no one on the left, whether they're Democrats, liberals, or anyone else, who is out here saying they don't care about murders or violence. Nobody believes that. But this is the kind of framing some commentators use, including Scott Jennings, and it feels incredibly misleading. On Abby Phillip's show, he kept talking about reaching an acceptable level of violence. And when Abby directly asked him what that even means, he didn't answer. Instead, he pushed it back on her, which is something he does often. What Scott tends to avoid acknowledging, even though it's been brought up multiple times on Abby's show, is that crime trends in places like Washington, D.C. have been more complex than the picture he paints. Instead of dealing with the actual data, he repeats talking points that make the situation sound far worse in a very exaggerated way. And then others in the MAGA world repeat the same lines, as if saying it enough times makes it true. And then there's a moment with Julie Rodzinski. The way he responded felt more like a schoolyard argument than an adult discussion, saying things like, "I'm not going to allow that," on a show that isn't even his. It just came off as immature and defensive rather than productive. Abby is the host, not him.
For a living.
Really? I elect a lot of Democrats. Let me finish my thought here, please. Can I just finish what I was about to say, which is that on January 6th, he could have deployed the National Guard. He chose not to. Now, today, because somebody named Big Balls got beat up, allegedly, he wants to deploy the National Guard to a place that has had a 30-year low in violence. And we all know that he is doing this because it's a power grab. He could have done this when this district was actually in danger on January 6th, but he didn't. And I think that's what's so offensive. He talks about backing the blue. He talks about law enforcement. He didn't give a damn, Scott. And you agreed back on January 6th. He didn't give a damn about those police officers and about the safety of people in Washington, D.C. Today, because he wants a power grab, he's doing this despite the fact that every statistic shows that Washington, D.C. has not been safer in the last 30 years. That's the
How is that going to fly? I mean, I don't know if this will ever go to a court. Maybe it will if he tries to get some kind of long-term extension. But how do you go from, 2023, which was not even a high, honestly, historically not a high for D.C., but a high in recent history, to now a 30-year low, to a few months ago, Donald Trump was saying crime in D.C. is so much better because of my people. He was saying that. And then go to Congress and say, we need indefinite authority over D.C.'s local police force? How is that going to work?
Well, the answer is no for me. He's reassigning hundreds of members of the U.S. military, hundreds of FBI agents. And I'm curious to know what federal law enforcement responsibilities are those agents neglecting in order to perform local police functions in D.C. And I just want to echo my agreement. Donald Trump is probably the greatest champion of lawlessness and disorder in our nation's capital. On the very first day of his presidency, he issued a blanket pardon for 1,500 people who were connected to a violent invasion of the U.S. Capitol, a violent invasion in which law enforcement officers were assaulted with dangerous weapons like fire extinguishers and pepper spray. And so he has no credibility on the subject of public safety at all.
Here's how I see it, and I'm sure many of you watching feel the same way. Donald Trump has a very heavy-handed style of leadership. He leans toward using strong displays of power, and what's happening in Washington, D.C. right now really shows that. He's calling in the military to deal with what he says is a crime problem, even though many reports have shown crime in the area has been trending downward compared to past decades. And then there's an immigration situation. He's pushing for large, highly secured facilities to hold people who cross the border, many of whom are not violent and are simply trying to work or build a life here. To me, the approach feels more like a political show of force than a real solution. Commentators like Scott Jennings defend Trump's style, and that's their choice. But what frustrates me is that they never acknowledge the full context. Even when crime statistics are brought up right there on Abby Phillip's show, Scott avoids that part of the conversation. Of course, we all wish violent crime didn't exist at all. That's something everyone agrees on. But sending in the National Guard for long-term policing doesn't feel like the answer to me. It feels more like doubling down on intimidation rather than addressing root causes. And then when Scott Jennings debates people like Julie Rodzinski, the dynamic gets childish at times. The interruptions, the eye-rolling, the constant deflecting. It honestly feels more like middle school behavior than a serious policy discussion. Abby Phillip runs a solid show, and she keeps things on track. But there are moments where you almost wish she could just mute his mic and say, take a breather. Anyway, I'm curious where you stand on this. Do you find yourself agreeing more with Abby Phillip and Julie Rodzinski in this debate, or with Scott Jennings? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you're enjoying the breakdowns, don't forget to like and subscribe.